Hello and welcome to Journey Intelligence Weekly, your briefing on the latest news and trends in the world of AI. I'm Jordan Roberts here with Mark Pizzoli, and we're both from Journey Alliance, the proud sponsors of this series. Thank you for joining us today. And before we get started, as always, we would like for this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions or comments as we go along, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will add them as we go along. And also, if you're curious about applying AI and some of the concepts that we talk about in these episodes, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you to our webpage where you can learn more about our AI training for work. And with that said, we're going to actually jump into some use cases with AI, particularly this week about the difference between 4.0 and ChatGPT 5. So it's the models with ChatGPT. Mark's got an example up to show us kind of the differences in how they talk. Mark, take us away.
Yeah, let me get it up here on screen real fast. So what I'm going to show you is, so I worked up Test GPT. Not very exciting, super boring, in fact. But it has some really basic instructions. I think it might be a little hard for you to see, but I'm clicking on the wrong screen. I'm going to click on this screen. The basic instructions, two-step GPT, doesn't do much. It asks for a name, and then it asks us to tell it prompts us to tell us more about the name we gave, right? A bio, something like that. So, and then this part right here, I'm going to take out for now. I'm going to add this back later. Okay. So really, that's what I have to do. Ask me for a name, and then ask it to tell us more about the submitter. What I want to show you is the difference between how 4.0 responds to a really basic prompt stream workflow, if you will, like this, versus how ChatGPT 5 responds. And then we'll talk a little bit about why. For those of you that don't know, this is the GPT configuration window. I'm not going to go into any of the rest of it, but like I'm just doing, this is a test chat. I can choose my model up here. I can't use the conversation starters. For those of you that know what those are, for whatever reason, it looks like you can click, but you can't. So I'm going to type instead. Let's go. All right, it's going to ask me for who's a submitter. I'm going to use the same name each time. I'll use John Smith. Right. And you'll notice, what I want you to notice here is I got a fairly basic, right? My ask in the GPT instructions was just ask the name of the submitter. And then my ask for step 1, right? I started with step 0. Technical thing, ignore it, doesn't really matter. But so the second step, right, is ask the user to tell us more about the submitter. That's all I said, but then it decided to give me, for example, you can do these things, right? So it offered some examples. So interestingly, like we didn't really tell it to offer us examples, right? So it's interesting that it did. So let's run the same, we're going to run the same answers, the same GPT, but I'm going to run it in ChatGPT 5. Okay, so let's go. So I get similar first, right, response, but then I give the name and it says, like, tell me more about them. But you'll notice it said, here's some things you can potentially tell me, but look at how much more consolidated it is, how much less it's really, it's using fewer words. It's basically just a lot more brief, I guess, is the best way of thinking about it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you think about it this way, it's still trying to be helpful, but it's not, it's not quite as verbose as 4 was.
Yeah.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to push this in, and basically I'm going to tell it to offer examples now. So offer some examples of the things they can tell you. If the user, and then I'm adding also, if the user doesn't know more about the submitter, make up a bio and share it back to the submitter. Okay. But still same basic kind of instructions here. So if we go back to 4, in this case. Okay. Right? Similar, right? What's the name of the submitter? Come back here though, right? And we get basically what we got last time. We actually don't get much more from 4.0 because it was already giving us examples, right? Now I'm going to switch back to 5 and I'm going to show you what happens here in 5. And I know this is a little repetitive, but hopefully you'll get the point. So no change here.
Oh, it added a rocket emoji. That is
true. A rocket emoji, yes. Right? But now 5 behaves like 4.0 does. Right?
Yeah.
So I would say one of the primary differences that we see between 4.0 and 5 is that 5 is more compliant, I guess, and in both ways. It doesn't over deliver as much, and it also doesn't under deliver as much. So it does what you ask it to do, and it definitely has cut back on the go above and beyond, right? Do more than what I've actually asked for, which 4.0 did a lot. It often did quite a bit more than what you asked it for. So that feels really different to people. It also is less creative across a lot of different domains. I've talked to a lot of people. Everyone feels the same. It's almost intentionally less creative until you tell it to be creative. So I think this has left people with the feeling of, I don't get as much as I used to, and what I do get isn't quite as creative, and therefore it doesn't feel like it's as good as it used to feel, right? It doesn't have that same, doesn't deliver the same feeling that it used to deliver, which is why I think a lot of people are having a poor experience. They feel like they're not, they really have to change their style, and they've learned how to use the old ChatGPT, but they haven't yet learned how to use 5. So I think that's really the big learning, is that you need to be more explicit with what you want. And if you want something, you need to ask for it. And you need to not assume that ChatGPT is going to just, specifically 5, that it's going to just bring things to you that you didn't explicitly request. So that's my primary learning from this. I will tell you that I have, in a general sense, from the people I talk to, what I'm hearing most, business users, they're okay, because they already were asking for what they wanted, right? They were being more explicit. This is why I I need this. They were using longer prompts, more context, more explicit asks. More casual users, I think, found that it wasn't as interactive as it was before. So, but I also have a theory, right? I have a theory of why this is. I don't hear anyone talking about it from this perspective. So my theory is that that ChatGPT 5 was fundamentally an economic decision. I think that the big learning here is, I think OpenAI made a decision that, hey, we have all these users on free and $20 a month plans, and what if we make the model more brief, right? Make it use more tokens. I think we aren't as worried about the experience for the people that are on free, right? The free experience needs to work, but it doesn't need to be fantastic because it's free. But the people that are paying for Teams and Pro and Plus, we want their experience to be good. And if you start to segment your audience, I really think that if the people that pay for ChatGPT, their experience has improved, versus people that don't pay for ChatGPT and their experience maybe has declined. So I think in one sense, they catered the changes toward the people that were paying for the service. But then additionally, you'll notice that you get briefer responses from 5.
Yeah.
And that saves token usage, right? Fewer words means fewer tokens, and fewer tokens means less cost per query. So, and none of this matters because for a single user. Like for me, it doesn't matter because 100 tokens is not even worth a penny, right? So like they don't notice. But 1,000,000 tokens is worth, I don't know, a couple bucks, $5, $6. And so I don't think people understand the scale of what OpenAI is dealing with. And so when they're dealing with billions of tokens per day, and they can say, "Hey, let's use less pleases and thank yous." Like there was that old article before that they were saying that it was like $1 million a day in pleases and thank yous, right?
Yeah.
So if they start cutting that stuff out of the responses, which they can control, right? They can control the response. They can't so much control the prompt. They have the potential to save a lot of money. Like we're not just like $100,000, but like literally millions of dollars a month. And so I really believe that was the financial, that was the motivation. It's a financial motivation. I have one other piece of evidence. They took away all the old models from us. So you still have 4.0, but you won't have it for much longer, right? And 4.0 is actually one of the least expensive models from before. ChatGPT 5, if you pay per token, is actually less expensive already than 4, 4.0, 4, 4.1, and 0.3. But interestingly, they didn't take all the old models away from people that use the APIs. They didn't take them away from people that pay per token because they don't care. When you pay per token, they make profit per token. It's only when you pay unlimited that the number of tokens you use matters. So anyway, that's my take. Hopefully that's a little bit of help while you're struggling a bit with using 5 or how you need to improve your prompts to make it work better. But so that was something we thought we'd share. And we hope you found it useful.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people were complaining about, when it updated, I think that was the 4.0 update. When it came out, people were saying, it agrees with me too much. I don't like that. And that was probably largely coming from the people using it for business use cases. I have like a silly example of using it to try to find recipes, and I wanted a very no nonsense answer. And it got a little creative. I can show it actually, since we're still on the topic. I was asking for recipes that don't use dairy. I'm lactose intolerant. I don't usually care, but I figured I should start caring, So I'm asking for recipes that aren't trying to replace dairy. So they didn't have it to begin with. That doesn't really matter. Anyway, point is, it started giving me all of these creative recipes where I would have to kind of hunt to find some of these materials to make it. And it gave me a lot of it, like a lot of recipes like that. The only one that's really more simple here among these is probably like, these last 3 here. And so, I was trying to get it to give me simpler things. It was still trying to get too creative. And this was in 4.0. So this was an old chat. And I went back and I asked it the same initial prompt. And it gave me very basic answers. These are simple things that I'm not going to have to go to a specialty store to get the recipes for. And I think even though that's kind of silly, shows the difference between the two. Is like 4.0 4.0, I guess in this case, was a little more creative and out there with what it would give you. It would give you a little bit more than you asked for because it was trying to please you. That was its goal. This in 5, it's being more practical, which is good for business use cases. And that's become how most people are using it. So I do think you're really onto something there with that point that you were making, Mark, about it being about more practical use cases for business, at least.
I'm curious to hear what people think. Like if you have a comment or a question on that, like please let us know. What's your experience been like?
Yeah, absolutely. If you found that you prefer 4.0, but personally, I prefer 4.0. If I'm using it to frame out content, I actually still prefer 4.0. I think it does it better because 5 is still giving me those very direct answers. And if I'm trying to frame out something or brainstorm, I kind of want it to give me more like it used to. I want it to converse in the way that it used to.
Right.
But I'm not attached to the personality. I know some people really felt like they kind of lost something with that. I don't care so much about that. I wanted the answers to have more. So in that way, the change was kind of a challenge, but it's really interesting to see how it continues to lean towards the business use cases. So that's kind of our thoughts on ChatGPT 5. So we have a few news stories here. Recently, Perplexity has launched their Comet browser. Mark here got access to it, didn't you?
I did. I did. I didn't have a lot of luck using it, and then I saw something else shiny.
Fair. So researchers found a serious prompt injection vulnerability. Lots of technical sounding words there. What that means is when Comet was asked to summarize a page, it fed page content. So say you wanted it to summarize an article, it would take the words from the article and summarize them. Someone could have put in attacker instructions like steal my bank account information. That wouldn't be exactly what it would be, but something along those lines. And the LLM treated those hidden instructions as user commands. So it couldn't tell the difference between the article content and hidden commands. And it also couldn't tell the difference between those commands and the actual user's commands. So they were able to, a proof of concept showed that an attacker's hidden comment could make the agent navigate to account pages, read from the user's logged in Gmail, and exfiltrate credentials without extra user input. So, and it was also able to defeat traditional web protections because the agent is acting with the user's authenticated privileges. So just something to be mindful of when you're using these agents. Treat them like with some level of risk and understanding that that can happen. I'm sure that Perplexity is probably going to do something to address that issue. That's a pretty big deal.
I would think so, but this is an interesting avenue. It's an interesting attack vector, right? So a lot of assumptions here on my part, but I'm assuming that it's they're putting the text someplace that's not readable by a human, right? So it's in the back end of the browser or in the back end of the page. And so the AI engine, because it's getting the raw data from the page, sees it, but a person doesn't see it. And so in essence, the risk here, it kind of echoes a lot of what I posted about this week. It echoes a lot of this concept of like, hey, if you give an AI engine access to all of like for AI to really be effective, it needs to be able to act as you in a lot of different places, right? And think of all the things that quote unquote you have access to. Like I have access to my bank. I have access, actually multiple, right? I have access to my business banks. I have access to my email. I have access to my business email, right? All these, and then CRM systems and then when you start to add all this stuff together, normally we don't think of ourselves as a risk, but now you almost have to build security in such a way that it protects you from yourself because you want the AI to act as you. And that's really, really hard to do. Businesses struggle just to protect their business from an insider threat, meaning they have to, they struggle to protect themselves from a rogue employee. It's a whole different challenge. If you told IT to protect the company from IT, it would be, it's a monumental challenge, right? So, and that's essentially what this is starting to expose. As we give AI more and more access, we're going to create more and more opportunities for different for hackers to access or to attack in different ways, right? They're called attack vectors generally, security parlance, right? We're just exposing a different attack vectors, and so bad actors they have more ways that they can come at these things. AI is a newer technology. There's very few quote unquote AI security people already. I have discovered an interesting AI security tool that has a fun little quiz that quizzes about how smart you are about prompt injection. But there's just not a lot of people doing this yet. So this will be a whole new field. It'll be a whole new security field. And I think it's a really interesting thing that this is already starting to happen. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of alarming as you lean into agentic AI a little more. Something that should be really useful. And it is really useful. It's this really cool thing. I feel like us maybe less tech savvy, less IT minded people probably wouldn't have even thought that was an option.
Yeah, I think what with the up and coming standard kind of defense mechanism is going to be an AI that watches the AI and sees like, hey, does that make sense? Like, would the user actually want to? Why is this? Why are you going over after these passwords? Why are you getting 30 passwords? Like, the user doesn't need 30 passwords at once. So I think that the AI is gonna be kind of there'll be one that watches the work getting done and the other one doing the work. And so that's how you're gonna start to address these things. And so you have to kind of defeat multiple layers. But it's definitely interesting. And I mean, and coincidentally, like this same week, Anthropic launched their Claude for Chrome, right? So it's a plugin. It maybe doesn't have the same kind of exposure, but it maybe does because it's reading the page to know what's on the page. I don't know if it's using visual analysis of the page, or if it's using, or if it's reading the page, the back end of the page. But in that sense, they've got a Chrome plugin. It's just a research preview, but it gives Claude the ability to integrate with your browser and click around, right? So it gives Claude the ability to start to act as an agent. So this is a really interesting way. So Claude is coming at this from a different perspective than others, right? Microsoft and Perplexity are definitely taking the integrated directly into the browser approach, right? So Copilot is already starting to be integrated into the browser. You get a sidebar, you have a conversation in the sidebar with the chat agent, and you have your browser. Claude is using a different approach altogether, where you just continue to use your Claude application, but it can interact with your Chrome browser. So it's all this stuff basically is as we head toward more agentic AI. Like, these are the things. All these LLMs, they need to be able to access systems, all the systems you use, right? And your browser is the gateway to 95% of the systems you use. Like, how many people like desktop apps are really they're starting to be like, I only have a couple that I run. Claude is one of them, coincidentally, right? But most of the desktop apps now have Windows or have browser versions. So
yeah. Also, speaking of Claude, they have, and Claude is Anthropic's large language model. They have set some safety boundaries in their model, including explicitly banning the use of Claude to develop high-yield explosives and biological, nuclear, chemical, and radiological weapons. They also forbid cyber attack and malware being used in their materials, including call out risks for the agentic features. So you can use Claude coding to kind of create your own agents. So you cannot use that to create cyber attack or malware. It also narrows its political content band to only deceptive and disruptive election uses. So they're just trying to, create some safety measures in how their tool can be used. Also, kind of in a similar vein, OpenAI, and both OpenAI and Anthropic have tightened safety measures with their models so that they are less agreeable with you and won't feed into delusions. So if a user's, it's happened a couple of times where users have started being delusional and ChatGPT agreed with them or Claude agreed with them. And so they've both put in safety measures to prevent that from happening and to have the chat kind of redirect back into some basis of reality. So at least the model itself isn't going to be encouraging those types of behaviors or thoughts.
Yeah, a pretty big lawsuit was filed against OpenAI today, and that alleges that OpenAI, that ChatGPT assisted these parents' son in committing suicide. And I know it's a sensitive topic, But they have chat logs, and it doesn't look good for OpenAI in this case. And the chat logs are startling, like truly startling. So so when you think about it, they're already committing to they're committing to making a bunch of changes, and adding in some things that basically, not only if they detect situations like that, they'll start referring you to, mental health lines, and, the same types of things we see in other platforms. So they're likely going to take a pretty big hit on this. There's no question they're going to lose this lawsuit, in my opinion. They're going to settle is what's likely to happen.
Yeah, it does look pretty open and shut in this case. Yeah.
So, and this is part of an industry growing and learning, and that's that's kind of part of what happens as an industry matures. But these are really real concerns. I think the other thing Claude's doing here is they're taking the high road, right? So OpenAI and Microsoft both have pretty significant government contracts, and to get some, and I don't know the specifics of them, but they do work with the Department of Defense, and so if you're working with the Department of Defense, you potentially are working on defensive or offensive cyber attacks. You're potentially working on weapon systems, and so they won't have the luxury of being able to come out and in public say they're not going to do these things. And Anthropic is much smaller than OpenAI, so that's not the avenue they're taking, as far as I know. They're not doing any defense work yet, and so this is really not for them. They kind of get to play the good guy to OpenAI's bad guy in that case, right? So they get some PR out of it, and it really isn't going to cost them much in terms of customers in the long run. It's not the primary place where they play, but the primary place they do play with developers actually cares about that kind of stuff. So I think it's pretty smart for them on their front.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though Claude or Anthropic is not the one being sued in this case, adding those safety measures, apart from the weapons thing, that's them learning from OpenAI's mistake there wisely, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're just about at time here, Mark. Is there a news story you think you can slip in that's quick?
Well, I just think, just because it's funny, so Google launched Nano Banana this week. It's a code name, but it's really for it's Google's 2.5, so Gemini 2.5 Flash image editing tool. If you do a lot of image editing, you're going to want to go check it out. It's topping a lot of other models, especially with professional image editing, being able to maintain character style consistency across multi-turn edits, right? So change this, change it again, change this other thing, but the person still looks like the original person they look like. So you finally can start to do take a real image and just make some minor adjustments to it on the things you want to fix without changing what the person in the image looks like, right? And that has been really challenging for a lot of models up to now. So Google's made some really big leaps here. And it includes watermarking out of the gate, which is a new, that's pretty, with images, it's nice because you can watermark an image without seeing it in the image, and you can know kind of who sourced the image. With text, that's a lot harder, almost impossible, actually. But with images, they're pretty watermarked. So we'll have a pretty clear ID in a year or two that which images are fake, were created by AI, which ones weren't. There'll always be tools that do it without watermarks, but the big tools are all going to have something baked in. So anyway, I ran us over a bit.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, if you're curious about using AI in your role, you can scan that QR code. It'll take you to our website where you can learn more about our AI training. And as always, we'll be back here next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for joining us.
Ciao, everyone.